Gang life is built on loyalty, power, and fear, but when the law catches up, even the toughest leaders face the consequences. In this story, we explore the moment notorious gang members were handed life sentences for their violent crimes. From chilling courtroom reactions to the stunned silence of their associates, these life-changing rulings expose the harsh reality behind the bravado, showing that no one, not even the most feared figures on the streets, can escape justice. Let's have a look at how these gang leaders react to life sentences.
Javon Woolfork. At just 19 years old, Woolfork sat before a judge and insisted again and again that what happened was consensual. Calm at first, almost casual, he tried to narrate the night in his own words. Everyone had been chilling, he said. There was drinking. Some people stepped out. He claimed it was just him and the girl in the room after that. He refused to share details, repeating one phrase like a shield. It happened before the fighting started. But the court wasn't listening to a story told in isolation. It was weighing evidence, testimony, and video, pieces that painted a far darker picture. The case centered on events from 2013, when Woolfork and 4 other teenagers lured a 16-year-old girl to a house in Hollywood. What followed, according to prosecutors and the victim, was not a misunderstanding or a private encounter gone wrong. It was a coordinated ambush. The girl was beaten, dragged, and terrorized. Cell phone footage, later recovered by police, captured the assault in brutal clarity. 5 suspects were charged. 4 chose to plead guilty. Woolfork did not. The victim's testimony stopped the courtroom cold. She described being trapped inside the house, surrounded and threatened. If she didn't comply, she said the violence would continue. When she begged to be let out, the beating intensified. Punches to her face, her hair yanked, her head slammed against concrete. What felt like minutes stretched into what she described as hours. Woolfork's response was combative. He demanded evidence at every turn, challenging the prosecution and the judge alike. Where was the DNA? Where was proof of penetration? Where was the evidence? He asked over and over, as if repetition alone could erase what had already been shown. At one point, he dismissed his own statements entirely, saying what he said didn't matter. It was a risky stance, one that only hardened the court's view of him. Prosecutors argued that Woolfork was not just involved, but the mastermind behind the attack. The others, they said, acted under his direction. Then came the videos. When investigators revealed the existence of cell phone recordings taken by his co-defendants, Woolfork's posture changed almost instantly. The bravado drained away. The sharp questions stopped. In their place was desperation. He pleaded with the judge, asking for help, asking for his life, grasping for any remaining chance at freedom. It didn't work. The verdict was decisive. Woolfork was found guilty of sexual battery with the use of force likely to cause serious bodily harm. The words landed heavily in the courtroom, formal language carrying the weight of what the jury believed had been proven beyond doubt. At sentencing, Woolfork once again asked for mercy. He reminded the court of his age, 19 when it happened, 2 years already behind bars. But the judge was unmoved. The facts, the judge said, were extremely sick and depraved, and that assessment had not changed. The sentence followed, 30 years in prison. As the case closed, raw emotions spilled out beyond legal arguments and formal rulings. A grieving brother of another victim, his pain unmistakable, delivered a blistering condemnation, calling Woolfork a loser and wishing him death behind prison walls. It was harsh, unfiltered, and deeply human. A reminder that crimes like this ripple outward, leaving damage far beyond a single courtroom.
Zachary Borton. Police in Michigan were dispatched to a quiet home after a caller reported a shooting. The voice on the line sounded frantic. The front door was blown out. He said there were bodies on the ground, maybe dead. He wasn't sure. He had just come home, just left again, and was scared out of his mind. If he'd stayed, he claimed he might have been shot too. The dispatcher pressed for clarity. How many people were down? Where were they? Were they moving? 2, the caller said. 1 near the door, 1 in the living room. It was dark. He couldn't tell much. Everything sounded rushed, disjointed, like someone struggling to process a nightmare they had walked into by accident. But when officers arrived at the house in Grass Lake, southeast of Jackson, the scene told a very different story. Inside, police found not 2 victims, but 3. 3 elderly men, all shot multiple times, all dead. The house showed clear signs of violence, but not chaos. This wasn't a random attack or a break-in gone wrong. It was deliberate, and one person was missing. Zachary Borton, 43 years old, lived in the home with the victims. All 4 men were connected through the outlaw motorcycle club Iron Coffins chapter. By the time the bodies were discovered, Borton was already on the run. Authorities quickly learned he was also wanted in Grand Rapids for assault and for firing a weapon at a building. When Borton was finally arrested and brought in for questioning, his story shifted. The panicked bystander act was gone. In its place came a familiar legal strategy: self-defense. He told investigators that one of the men came at him through the front door, agitated, yelling, gun raised. Everything he said happened fast and slow at the same time, a blur. He fired 2 or 3 shots. Then another man moved, possibly fleeing, and Borton claimed he turned and fired again. He wasn't even sure who he hit. It was chaos, he insisted. But the jury didn't buy it. During the trial, prosecutors dismantled Borton's version of events piece by piece. The victims were elderly. One was shot in bed. Another was hit repeatedly after already being wounded. This wasn't defensive fire. This was a pursuit. 12 jurors drawn from all walks of life listened to the evidence and rejected the self-defense claim entirely. They convicted Zachary Borton on 3 counts of first-degree homicide. Then came sentencing, and with it a moment that stripped away any remaining distance between the crime and its impact. The brother of one of the victims stood up and unleashed a raw, furious confrontation. He called Borton a coward. He rejected the self-defense story outright. His brother, he said, had been asleep. He never had a chance to reach for a gun. Borton had run through that house like a madman, hunting people down. The words weren't polished. They weren't restrained. They were grief, anger, and disbelief colliding in open court. The judge didn't soften the blow either. He described the case as horrific, especially because it shattered the peace of what should have been a quiet community. He pointed out Borton's familiarity with firearms, his choice of a .40 caliber handgun, a weapon designed to stop a man, and his own admissions about trading up guns over time. The most damning detail, the judge said, was this: Borton saw one victim move after being shot, an 80-year-old man already wounded. Instead of stopping, instead of reassessing, he advanced. He hunted him down and fired again. That, the judge made clear, was why this was first-degree murder. The sentence was final and absolute: life in prison without the possibility of parole. No future hearings, no parole dates, no second chances. As the ruling was read, Zachary Borton didn't flinch. No visible reaction, no breakdown, just silence. But the courtroom had already spoken, and so had the evidence. Sometimes, life is decided in seconds, by a glance, a color, a question asked on the street. For Jay Shaw, a red backpack and a wrong assumption were all it took to end everything.
Pedro Espinoza. In March 2008, 17-year-old Jamil Shaw, too, was doing nothing extraordinary. He was walking home after school, phone pressed to his ear, talking casually with his girlfriend, a high school football player with no gang ties, no street reputation, no reason to be afraid, until someone stepped into his path. According to testimony, the men asked him a familiar question on certain streets: "What set you from?" Jamil didn't answer. He didn't recognize the language. He didn't belong to that world. Seconds later, he was shot and executed on the sidewalk. His girlfriend heard it all through the phone. Pedro Espinoza was 19 at the time. He was a known member of the 18th Street Gang and had been released from prison just 1 day earlier. Prosecutors said Espinoza mistook Jamil for a rival gang member because he was carrying a red Spider-Man backpack, a color commonly associated with Bloods. That single detail sealed Jamil's fate. The killing sent shockwaves through the community. Friends and family struggled to understand how a kid who didn't gangbang, didn't do none of that, could be gunned down over a misunderstanding. He wasn't armed, he wasn't aggressive, he never even answered the question. Espinoza was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. As the case moved to trial, testimony revealed a messy web of fear, loyalty, and contradictions. One witness, someone close to Espinoza, initially told police that Pedro had admitted to killing Jamil Shaw. Later on the stand, that story unraveled. The witness claimed he'd lied because he felt threatened, saying police pressured him and warned he could face decades in prison if he didn't cooperate. But the inconsistencies only drew more attention to what he let slip. He admitted knowing details about the crime before police even arrived. He used gang slang associated with rival sets. At one point, he acknowledged telling detectives that Espinoza had said he killed a Twinkie, a derogatory street term for members of the Rolling 20s Bloods. Then he backtracked again, calling it all made up.
The jury wasn't convinced by the flip-flopping. What remained constant was the core truth. Jamil Shah was unarmed, uninvolved, and killed simply for being mistaken as someone else. During sentencing, emotion finally spilled over. Jamil's uncle took the stand and delivered a blistering statement. He called Espinoza a coward, saying that when he grew up, fights were settled with fists, not bullets. Killing someone in cold blood, he said, was the weakest possible choice. Throughout it all, Espinoza showed no visible remorse. As the judge spoke, witnesses noted that he smiled with a visible smirk on his face every now and then. No bowed head, no regret, just defiance. Then came the sentence. The courtroom fell silent as the judge ordered Pedro Espinoza to be transferred to California State Prison at San Quentin for the first-degree murder of Jamil Shah. Espinoza was sentenced to death. The court added a consecutive sentence of 25 years to life and remanded him into custody without bail. The language was formal, almost mechanical, but the meaning was final. Espinoza would remain in San Quentin awaiting the automatic appeal process required in capital cases. If upheld, the sentence would be carried out following authorization by the California Supreme Court and the issuance of a warrant of execution. For Jamil's family, no sentence could restore what was taken. A teenager with a future, school, football, relationships, plans, was gone forever, erased by a color and a question he didn't understand. While Jamil's case spiraled out of control so fast that he didn't realize how bad it's going to get until he was dead, the next one started with a stolen car and ended with a courtroom eruption that sealed a man's fate forever.